You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Now, what do Billie Eilish, Joaquin Phoenix, Natalie Portman, Stevie Wonder, and Lewis Hamilton have in common? They're all vegans. Vegan diets were once considered niche, but that's changing thanks to the influence of these celebrities, coupled with a growing awareness of health, animal rights, and environmental concerns. More people are warming up to the idea of a fully plant-based diet. No meat, dairy, eggs, and even honey. And some of them are turning to global online platform, Abillion, established in Singapore in 2017. Abillion has a diverse membership spanning 188 countries. It allows individuals to explore and review vegan, cruelty-free, and sustainable products in restaurants across their respective countries and territories. In the studio with me today is its founder, Vikas Garg. Vikas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Julie.
So good to see you again. So let's start with your journey with veganism. What type of vegan are you? Were you born into a vegan lifestyle, a vegetarian turned vegan, or a meat eater embracing veganism?
It's a great question. I'm very lucky to have been brought up by my mom and dad, who both were vegetarian and are from a part of India that is the sort of cradle of vegetarianism in India. Most people think Indians are vegetarian, only about 20% are, but they tend to be in one part of India, which is the northwestern part. So yeah, I was born and raised vegetarian, moved to America when I was 4. And that was interesting because going from being pretty healthy and vegetarian in India to then basically being vegetarian where my entire food pyramid became a slice of pizza, right, was an interesting kind of switch that none of us really noticed. And a big part of my upbringing was being compassionate to animals. So I always really had that as a little bit of a North Star. And then I became vegan around 2008. Both my mom and dad started to get really sick. I started to ask a lot of questions. I did get a pet in my 20s. I got a dog. And even though I had this profound love of animals, having this animal in my life on a 24/7 basis really just brought that feeling even closer. And a lot of different things were happening, the global financial crisis, and a lot of these things, especially my parents' sicknesses, led me to going vegan. And that was an incredible transformation, and so much so that I eventually decided I want to start a business around that.
Okay. I mean, I know that it's not about just diet, but it's your lifestyle as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just checking out your shoes, making sure, is that leather, vegan leather?
They're actually neither. They're just microfibers. If you drive, I'm sure, Julie, you're used to being in a lot of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. If you're in any of these cars, the seats might be made out of a material called Alcantara, which is a completely synthetic suede. It's microfiber. So I wouldn't wear leather. And you're absolutely right. Veganism is more than just a food choice. Food is, of course, important because it's the single consumer purchase all of humanity makes on a day-to-day basis. And we're constantly acting out on it. You know, it's 11 a.m. How many times have you thought about food? You might have thought about food 50, 60 times already. So it's constantly on our minds. But this lifestyle is about nonviolence more than anything, and compassion. And that goes for people, that goes for animals, that goes for your own life, your own health, what you put into your body, what you wear, what you do.
Yeah, I can clearly see that it means a lot to you. You ditched all those years in finance, hedge funds, and investment banking to create this very platform. What inspired you?
A few different things. A lot of us are always searching for purpose and searching for meaning. And so for me, going vegan really brought purpose down to the most basic things that I did day in, day out, like what I ate or what I chose to wear. And that has always been an incredibly inspiring feeling. The catalyst for me, and I always knew that I wanted to start. For me, the dream when I was 13, 14 years old, I was a young Indian immigrant in America. The way to get rich quick, because that was every boy's dream in New York City, was to go into finance, right? Or become a doctor or something like that. And so for me, Wall Street kind of came naturally. And that was what I ran with. And when I finally came to Singapore 9 years ago to help run a really big hedge fund here, I started to get this feeling that now that I finally got to that stage and the next move for me was to start one of these businesses, I started to really feel, is that really what I want to spend the next 40 or 50 years of my life doing? Two, something I'm incredibly proud of is being American. So I was originally from India, but made in America. And my family owes America so much for free public school education, for opportunities that we wouldn't have had in India. And in the 2016 US election, I, along with a lot of other people, felt like America was changing and not for the better. And for me, it was a wake-up moment. It was a big watershed moment because I started for the first time understanding what tech was doing to the world, starting to look at social media, started to look at these platforms that had connected the world's people, companies.
I hear that you didn't even have a social media account.
I didn't. I had never used Facebook. I didn't even know what Instagram was. I'd never used TikTok or Twitter. But we started to after that event in November of 2016. And I felt like, is it possible to design algorithms to actually create social impact? Can we design a social media platform where actions people are taking are creating positive impact? This mindless scrolling with our finger that we're all guilty of, can we turn that into mindfulness? Mindfulness for each other, mindfulness for the planet. And I became obsessed with the idea there has to be room in the world to build something like that. So yeah, right after my birthday, which is right at the beginning of the year, I went into my boss's office here in Singapore and I said, hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to resign. And he was like, he thought, which firm has poached you, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just like, no, I just really think I want to do something really different with my life. And that's how I kind of got started.
And it's already been 7 years.
It has been 7 years since that moment. After that, I spent 3 months in a coding boot camp trying to learn how to code, more so thinking that I might find some really great young scrappy people who could help me build my ideas. And then we started the company here in Singapore in July of 2017.
That's great. I mean, back in 2020, I remember interviewing you and the name of the platform was Abillion Veg, and now it's Abillion. Is there a reason you changed the name? Has the mission or the objective evolved over time?
Absolutely. The mission has always stayed the same. We want to help 1 billion people live more sustainably. What's at the center of your plate is at the center of sustainability. Everything from poverty to access to education, to access to water, to security of land and availability of food for everyone, solving our health epidemics, our biodiversity and nature, protecting that. All of these issues, we do not need to look further than what is on our plate. What is on our plate is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire global transportation sector combined. So how do we create this shift towards people eating healthier, eating more sustainably, eating more green, right? So for us, when I first started the company, Abillion Veg was the best name I could think of that also had a domain name that I could purchase for $10.
I see.
And so I ran with it like, hey, we want to help 1 billion people become vegetarian and vegan because that's going to tackle all of these problems. And we want to build this platform that's part social media, part consumer reviews, part marketplace. And it's going to be food, and it's going to be products, and it's going to be people, and it's going to be impact, and there's going to be charities and nonprofits. The Abillion Veg to 1 billion was at some point, and we started to see really interesting things. We started to hear people try to pronounce Abillion Veg, Abillion Veg, and all these things. And I also started to feel like if we're going to build a platform that's truly inclusive, just a platform that's for vegetarians and vegans, but something that actually changes the world, not just the people who've already changed, we need our name to be more evocative of the mission. So it's open for interpretation and it's open for people to make it their own. And finally, I just covered up this and I said, wow, 1 billion. And our logo is 10 to the ninth, which equals a billion. We're now at 10 to the seventh, which is 10 million, but we're at 11.4 million people worldwide.
A billion obviously is quite an ambitious number. And I hear that you guys started with just one post a day, and now we're talking, millions of followers. Could we talk about how you managed to grow your platform like that? I mean, it must have taken a lot of content and data to attract users in the first place.
That's the hard part. So you want users and you want users to create content. Well, guess what? Users need to have a great experience to want to create content. Right. And most users online are not content creators. 99% of users are passive users. They're just there scrolling, surfing, etc. Very few, less than 1% of users actually create all the content that then everybody else enjoys and uses, right? So how do we get those people? For me, in the beginning, when our platform was clunky, when it took 2 minutes to upload a photo, when the photos then, once they were uploaded, were blurry, and when half the time when you tried to hit the post button, it just deleted everything that you had spent 5 minutes doing. We didn't know what services we were supposed to use and all of these things, right? We were learning on the job. So for us, it was like, okay, how do we get really motivated people who spend the time to do this in spite of all of those problems because they believe in the mission and they feel that, hey, if this thing succeeds, it will make the world a better place for me. So we didn't run social media ads. We certainly didn't want to be spending money on Facebook.
Or influencers?
Influencers wanted to just get paid to talk about something. So I was very skeptical of these things from the beginning. And maybe it helped that I was fairly cynical about this whole social media thing to begin with and wanted to create something different. So I felt like, hey, we're going to build this community of altruists and we want to turn everybody into an altruist. So basically the idea was when somebody eats something that's sustainable, eats something vegan, we would back that up with a donation that person could make to one of our partners. And in the beginning, I was literally going on PayPal and processing $10 donations and $5 donations and $2 donations. But we have to date grown that to over 4 million Singapore dollars donated by our little tiny startup to maybe about 100 different causes around the world. Instead of spending that money on marketing, on social media ads and influencers, we've created meaningful impact, saved the lives of animals, fed hungry children, planted tens of thousands of trees, reforested mangroves in Indonesia. And so I rest better, a little better, knowing that if this all doesn't work out, at least we've done that. And I feel like we built it the right way. But the beautiful thing about that is we created gamification in our product that rewards people for creating that content. And that's brought on more than 100,000 content creators who aren't getting paid anything by us. We're not paying them anything, but we're getting these people because out of the goodness of their heart, they want to support a local grassroots nonprofit organization, and we enable them to do that. And at the same time, 65% of our users are meat eaters who use our platform to discover healthier options. They've maybe switched on to the idea of eating more green, eating healthier, eating more sustainably, whatever that might look like.
But sometimes these review apps, they face the issue of reliable information. How do you ensure that the content is authentic?
So in the beginning, when we had one review a day, it was me. And then we had this army of interns in-house. Then we built machine learning models to do this on an automated basis. We found that that's somewhat effective at things like finding whether a photo is a duplicate or other things. The reality is that you will always have some users, some portion of your users. I wouldn't call it bad behaviors because when we think about why our users are there, right? People on our platform are not getting anything out of it. They're not like pocketing a new iPhone or getting $5 as a gift certificate to spend at somewhere. At the worst, they're posting a lot of reviews to maybe earn. And now we actually give people equity in our company. So we've given 30,000 users over 800,000 Singapore dollars in equity in our business. But at the same time, the most valuable thing that these platforms do is not, create businesses for influencers, but that equity is valuable. So, hey, we're giving it away to our users in our community. But that's the thing, is like, how do you enroll people the right way? How do you not make it about them, but make it about what this means? So we have a very strong mission. So if you're out there on Abillion and you're posting nonsense, it's not really going to get a lot of engagement. And it's probably going to get moderated out. Our first line defense is our community. So the engagement every single day, we just crossed 1.1 billion impressions on the platform. So that first line defense against bad content or inappropriate content is our community.
That's very interesting. Well, talk to us about your revenue model, your business and operations.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I wanted to touch on actually from your past question also is that abundance, right? It's not just about showing people what's available, it's about changing the market. So when I first started here in Singapore, I scraped 5,000 restaurant menus online. I found less than 1,000 vegan options. So we said, hey, you know what? We need to send all this data that users are creating back out there in the world. That's going to do two things. This actually flows into your revenue question too. A, it's going to help us create a business. B, it's going to help us influence these businesses in a way to create a meritocracy for who's got the best plant-based options. So our platform is open to steakhouses and Korean restaurants and Japanese restaurants, as long as you've got something that somebody who wants to eat vegan food can eat, right? Same thing with brands. You could be a meat brand, but if you've got a product that happens to be plant-based or vegan, you can be on our platform. So by virtue of that, we're very welcoming. What we're trying to do is create a meritocracy for who's got the best. We send out tens of millions of emails every year back out to these businesses, and we get them to compete for who's got the best vegan options. So in a market like Singapore, we've now gone from less than 1,000 options in 2017 to 35,000 options on our platform across 6,700 restaurants. It's just like gluten-free. It's just like anything else. It just pays for you to have an option, and not a bad option, but a great option, the best option on the menu. So that's one. That also helps us drive, going into your revenue question, that helps us ultimately create a business, because we're constantly in touch with businesses. The open rates on our emails to 240,000 businesses around the world, 130,000 of them are F&B or restaurants. 107,000 of them are consumer products companies, ranging from Unilever to some startup makeup brand that you've never heard of, but that's making cruelty-free cosmetics products. In Bali, we've got it all, right? And it's all thanks to our users. Our users are the customers of those brands. 80% of our user base are women, ages kind of 18 to 40. So that's a group of very influential people that are making decisions on what's being purchased and put in the fridge in the house, what's feeding the kids, et cetera, et cetera. And so we help these brands and businesses tap into that. We've built the world's first peer-to-peer marketplace dedicated to sustainability. So you, Julie, in 2 minutes, can sign up and start selling something on Abillion. You know, I just bought like a beautiful hand-woven bookmark. My daughter is just starting to read books. She's 5 years old, so I bought her a bookmark on Abillion that one of our users who lives in Tempen, and I sell sourdough bread on the weekends that was my COVID hobbies. It's for anything that's vegan. It's for anything that's sustainable. We have computer programmers selling their services on the platform. We have designers on there. We have people doing online yoga classes, and this is global. So we support a lot of businesses now around the world.
Based on the engagement traction, a lot of data that you have collected, have you noticed significant trends or changes in the veganism or sustainability space? Have you noticed over the last few years?
Yeah, one is that, just speaking for ourselves, is, again, and even going back to Abillion Veg versus Abillion is not necessarily labeling ourselves or constricting us with a label, right? It's not so black and white. Take you, for instance, right? You come from a very rich tradition of food where meat is very commonplace in your diet. You're not going to necessarily make radical changes, but if we can walk away today with you sort of consciously saying, hey, I'm going to try this once a week or a few times a week, that's a win, right? So I think that labels in this world increasingly are stigmatizing. I look at somebody like my wife, who is a meat eater, but she's probably a lot healthier than me in terms of as a vegan. She's 99% of the time, she's pretty much vegan. Our kids are vegan, but she doesn't want to be labeled. And I think that that's a trend that we have to really embrace. Is meeting people where they are, right? A lot of consumers are looking for healthier food. So if they're looking to reduce their meat consumption, they're not looking to replace it with a product that mimics the taste of meat. They're looking to replace that with healthier foods that are more natural, that are green and colorful and whole grains and things like that. And so it's nice to see, I think that the healthy foods movement is definitely on the rise. And brands are increasingly, one of the big trends is brands. When we talk about consumer products, whether that's a pair of sneakers or that's a mascara that you're buying, brands are increasingly leaning in. The conversation is happening amongst consumers around their supply chains, and social media is really arming people with so much information through a combination of film and social media that it is starting to feel like the consumer demand side of it as a trend is becoming more and more inevitable. And it's becoming more important that brands clearly communicate what they're doing to consumers.
Yeah, there seems to be a shift, but there are still prejudices and misconceptions toward veganism or plant-based diet. What are the common ones? Could you debunk them for us?
Well, that milk is good for you, right? You're the only species on the planet that drinks the breast milk of another species. And that is more marketing and the industrialization efforts around agriculture that were made in the 20th century, especially after World War II, than anything else. And milk is actually not a very good product, whether you're talking about protein or calcium. It's also a very inefficient source of food because of what we need to do to farm those animals, to provide for those animals, and to enrich them enough so they provide milk for us. It is an incredibly carbon-intensive, methane-intensive form of agriculture. It's also the cause of many health problems, from high cholesterol to fat to even things like cancer and breast cancer.
So Vikas, before I let you go, for someone looking to shift towards a more plant-based lifestyle, where would you recommend they start? Any tips or advice for the beginner like me?
So the big part of making changes to this lifestyle is finding support and a community around you. And that's really what Abillion is all about, right? We provide this great community of people around the world that are supportive. They're not antagonizing. So that's definitely a great resource to start. I'd say watch a documentary, watch What the Health or The Game Changers, or if you're interested in what is happening to animals around the world, or what's happening in the fashion industry.
All right, so educating ourselves and seek out resources like
Yes.
your platform for support and inspiration along the way sounds like a solid plan. Thank you very much for coming in today and sharing your stories with us.
I appreciate it, Julia. Thank you for making time for me.
Well, big thanks to Vikas and to our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode. The team behind this podcast is Tiffany Ang, Sein Nguyen, Joanne Chan, Crispina Robert. Until next week, this is Julie Yoo, signing off.